Mornings in Seattle during fall always start with a gentle rain, particularly near the corner in downtown under the shadow of the Smith Tower. Lindsay Wang's law office sign, crafted in silver, shimmered under the morning rays. After a decade of departing from a prominent law firm, Lindsay had managed to construct her own empire over these 10 years. Now, at 43, she sat by her windowed office on the 15th floor, scanning through documents prepared for a new litigation she was handling. Her office was tastefully decorated with her Stanford Law School degree and various accolades, including the Washington State Women Entrepreneur Award. Alongside these, rested a cherished family photo of her 12-year-old daughter, Madison, and her husband, Thomas, currently stationed in Hong Kong for a work assignment. Beaming in the sunlit photo, the family looked joyous. Mizu Wang, the documents for your 9 a.m. client meeting are here, Olivia, her dedicated secretary, announced while delivering immaculately arranged paperwork. Through her precision, she won Lindsay's utmost confidence. Thank you. By the way, did you receive any updates from Madison School? Yes, they updated the choir schedule. I sent you the email, responded Olivia. Checking the clock, it showed 8:15 a.m. by then. Madison would be en route on her school bus. Lindsay's phone buzzed, displaying a message from Madison saying, "Mom, I aced my math test and have perfectly memorized the choir song for my next concert. You have to be there." A heartfelt smile crossed Lindsay's face, acknowledging her daughter's inherited wit and musical talent, mirroring her father's kindness. As she typed her encouraging reply, her thoughts drifted momentarily to her husband in Hong Kong. His major assignment with a global IT firm was to keep him abroad for another 8 months. Although lonesome, their family stayed connected through daily video calls. Congratulations, Madison. Let's order your favorite Thai meal tonight as a treat, and I'll definitely attend your concert. We'll record it for Dad, too. Balancing work with family responsibilities wasn't easy, yet Lindsay pulled it off with grace. Breakfasts together were non-negotiable, and she made earnest attempts to be home for dinners. Weekends were reserved for family fun, like watching movies or jogging around Green Lake Park. With her husband's absence, her bond with Madison had only intensified. "Mizu Wang, your meeting time nears," Olivia's voice reminded Lindsay, snapping her back to the immediate challenge. The upcoming negotiation with a notable construction firm promised to be difficult, yet fulfilling. Right before stepping into the conference room, she noticed a message from her mother, Lindsay, about this month's rent. Exhaling softly, Lindsay reflected on her mother's unexpected financial struggles since her father's passing. Perceived as a prosperous businessman, her father had actually been struggling with debts, and insurance cash was depleted in debt clearance. Since then, Lindsay had taken on the role of legal protector and financial supporter, covering her mother's luxury apartment rent and other necessary expenses, a responsibility she embraced as a daughter. Similar support extended to her sister Kristen, who was coping with single motherhood after their parents' separation. Despite juggling part-time jobs, paying for her son's education exceeded Kristen's financial limits. Lindsay couldn't refuse when Kristen pleaded for Joseph's future, though she had to remind herself to concentrate on present obligations. Resolving to respond to her mother's message later, Lindsay ushered into the conference room, greeting everyone with her familiar smile. "Good morning, everyone. Let's begin our discussion." Following morning meetings, as Lindsay glanced outside, the rain had ceased unexpectedly, revealing a rare blue sky. Madison would be in her beloved English class then. As she opened her door, Olivia handed her additional documents for final checks ahead of tomorrow's trial. Also, Madison's school reached out again regarding the new date for next week's parent-teacher meeting. Rain clouds began gathering again, reflected in Olivia's observation. "Mizu Wang, your mother is calling." It was unusual for Debbie to call without giving a day post message. Conversations with her mother invariably concerned financial matters. "I'm sorry for not replying sooner. Work has been hectic." "What's the matter, Mom?" "Lindsay, it's about the rent," started Debbie. Lindsay suppressed a deep sigh when her mother's voice revealed no uncertainty about Joseph's school trip expenses. The requests seemed never-ending. A new hobby last week, tutoring fees before that. Let me think about it, she said, trying to find time to assess the budget. Her mother Debbie and sister Kristen's lifestyles were of particular concern. Their social media often showed luxury brands and elegant dining, which couldn't be covered by part-time work alone. Lindsay knew that she couldn't keep up this financial support in the long term, especially thinking about her daughter Madison's future. Her husband Thomas shared similar concerns during recent video calls, stating, "Helping those you love is important, but creating dependency is not good." After her conversation with her mother, Lindsay opened her laptop to draft a response to an email she'd put off. "Please let me reconsider the amount I send from next month. I want to discuss this properly, so please suggest a convenient day," she typed. Before sending, she hesitated, aware of the potential impact on family relationships, but knew it was necessary. Right after she sent the email, her sister Kristen called, upset. "Why now?" Kristen asked angrily. "Think about Joseph's future. Let's discuss this calmly. You spare no expense for Madison's needs." Lindsay was surprised by these words. She indeed wanted the best education for Madison, a natural parental instinct. The conversation offered no resolution. A week later, anticipating Madison's parent-teacher meeting, Olivia entered Lindsay's office with business trip preparations. "Here are the final steps for your trip tomorrow. You have a morning flight," Olivia said. "Thank you," Lindsay replied, then added, "Call my mother, check if she can take Madison tomorrow." Leaving her daughter with her mother was typically avoided, but an unavoidable trial required it. Also concerning was her mother's silence after learning of the financial change, unlike Kristen's angry calls. Olivia returned with surprising news. "Your mother said of course. Joseph will be there too." This unusually swift commitment made Lindsay uneasy. Madison was asked, during dinner, how she felt about staying at Grandma's. Lindsay noticed hesitation as her daughter said, "Yeah," before adding, "But lately, Joseph has been avoiding me." This remark, combined with Kristen's anger and her mother's unusual quick agreement, hinted at something foreboding. Unable to define this sense, Lindsay continued her preparations. The next morning, en route to the airport, she recalled telling her daughter, "Promise me, if anything happens, call me right away." "I know, Mom, it'll be fine," Madison replied brightly. Arriving at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport amid the morning rush, Lindsay boarded her flight, trying to review documents for a critical trial with a major construction firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be taking off shortly," announced the flight attendant. Checking her phone one last time before it was turned off, there were no new messages from Madison or Debbie. Though this should be normal, Lindsay couldn't shake an inexplicable unease as the court session awaited. During the session, Lindsay's arguments were precise and impactful, swiftly overwhelming the opposing counsel. The meeting adjourned, and suddenly her cell phone vibrated with a message from Madison. Instinct drove her immediate understanding. Something had gone terribly awry. "Mom," Madison uttered, "they left without me, Grandma and the others." Fear laced her trembling voice, causing Lindsay's heart to sink. "What do you mean? Tell me everything," she asked. Madison explained, "I was just playing outside, and then they all got in the car and left. Joseph, Grandma, and Aunt Kristen have not returned." Hands trembling, Lindsay inquired, "Where are you now?" Madison responded fearfully, "At Grandma's house." "What should I do?" "Stay put." "I'll call the police immediately," Lindsay assured, then quickly ended the call. She immediately reached out to her mother Debbie, but after several rings, her unnervingly calm voice greeted Lindsay, saying, "I'm about to board a plane," before hanging up abruptly. Rage surged through Lindsay as she immediately informed the police, explaining the deliberate neglect of her 12-year-old daughter by her mother and sister. Concurrently, she instructed her office staff to prepare necessary legal actions. "Olivia, file for the restraining orders, and do what you must to freeze all support transfers to my mother and Christine's accounts," she directed. Lindsay, while booking the earliest flight to Seattle, contacted Madison again. "Madison, the police are on their way." "I'll be there soon," she reassured, sensing her daughter's fear.
"I'm scared, Mom," Madison cried.
"You've done nothing wrong. I'll be with you shortly," Lindsay comforted. After ending the call, She wrestled with her emotions as she tried to comprehend the actions of her mother and sister. Leaving a child like that was unequivocal child neglect. Throughout her journey to the airport, Lindsay maintained communication with the police. They reported to her that a patrol car had arrived and Madison was safe. Security footage from her mother's house chillingly showed Debbie and Kristen departing in mirth. This was no accident, it was intentional. Lindsay, on her flight back, furiously documented timelines, evidence, and necessary legal steps, determined to maintain composure. Upon arrival at her mother's home, she was greeted by her resilient daughter and a police officer. Seeing Madison, Lindsay allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. "Mom," Madison cried, rushing to her, tearful and trembling within Lindsay's embrace. "You did so well. All is fine now," Lindsay whispered comfortingly. A police officer approached. "The footage confirms a planned act. Would you like to file a complaint?" Lindsay affirmed her resolve. "Yes, and I will apply for a restraining order." Just then, her phone buzzed with a call from her mother, the call Lindsay rejected, prioritizing her daughter's safety. On the journey home, Madison recounted the surreal events. "Joseph turned cold, and while I was playing, they left. I heard the lock click shut." Lindsay, listening intently, connected the dots of her mother's and Christine's behavior since she communicated about the support review, their response, and today's events, a calculated manipulation. Her mother, using Madison as leverage, and Christine channeling jealousy. Back home, Lindsay promptly acted. "Olivia, clear my schedule and arrange psychological help for Madison." This marked a turning point in familial ties, but it was a path Lindsay must take to safeguard her daughter and dismantle the family's toxic dynamics. The atmosphere in Lindsay's office was grave. Documents displayed methodically testified to the previous day's shocking events. "Mizu Wang, your mother called," Olivia informed. Lindsay quietly informed her colleague that it was the 10th call of the morning, advising to log the calls but do not respond. Earlier that morning, her video call with her husband, Thomas, who was in Hong Kong, had finished. Thomas offered to return immediately, but Lindsay refused, preferring to avoid emotional decisions and ensure that everything was handled legally and finally. Wayne Harrison, the consulting attorney and a longtime friend, entered the office. He had come right away upon learning of the situation. "I've reviewed all the documents," Wayne said. "The restraining order will certainly be issued. The question is what happens next." Lindsay nodded silently and said, "I've started the process to cease financial support completely." "That's a sensible decision," Wayne continued as he scanned the documents, "but we need to consider their reaction, especially the possibility of public defamation." Her phone vibrated just then. It was a message from her mother on an SNS account she hadn't used in a while. "Why did you call the police?" "It's a family matter." Madison wasn't in any danger. It was just a lesson. Lindsay's hands trembled. A lesson? Leaving a 12-year-old child alone is a lesson? There was a cruel intent to remind Lindsay and Madison of their vulnerabilities. "Don't get emotional," Wayne advised softly. "They will certainly try to use your response against you." He was right. Lindsay took a deep breath, calming herself. Her over 2 decades of legal experience were being tested. "Did you get an appointment for Madison's psychological counseling?" she asked Olivia. "Yes, tomorrow at 3 p.m., Olivia replied, with Dr. Allison Gale. Her daughter's psychological well-being was Lindsay's top priority. Last night, Madison had nightmares and awoke asking anxiously, "Mom, are you still here?" Hearing this, Lindsay's heart ached. Speaking softly, Wayne asked, "Are you aware of your mother and Christine's financial situation?" "Yes," Lindsay replied. "My mother's rent, Joseph's school fees, and other living expenses. Cutting those off will render their lives unsustainable." "I know, but that's a consequence of their choices." A call came from the office reception.
Christine was there.
"Turn her away," Lindsay instructed instantly, but Christine's voice was already echoing in the hallway. "Lindsay, listen to me. It was for Madison's sake." Closing her eyes, Lindsay remembered how Christine thought hurting Madison would grant her control. Her sister's pleas dredged up memories of their childhood, of smiles and shared playtime. now fractured like thin ice. "Should I call security?" Olivia asked, concerned. "Yes, please," Lindsay answered. Moments later, Christine's voice faded, though its echoes weighed heavy in the room. "It's not over yet," Lindsay said softly. "They will try something else." Wayne nodded. "That's why we must document everything and preserve evidence." This was crucial, to not be swayed by emotion and to record all events. In the afternoon, Lindsay left work early to pick up Madison from school. As soon as her daughter saw her mother, she ran over. "Mom, you came to pick me up like you promised." The fear of abandonment still lingered in Madison, and Lindsay's heart ached. "Of course, I will never leave you behind." On the way home, Madison chatted about her school day. Although the conversation was ordinary, Lindsay sensed the depth of her daughter's wounds in her sometimes nervous expressions. At home, the answering machine blinked with a message from Debbie. "Lindsay, please let's talk. It's terrible for the family to fall apart over this." Lindsay deleted it before it finished playing. There was no turning back. This was not just a dispute, but a deliberate act of harm. At night, once Madison was asleep, Lindsay stayed up in her study, planning for the next day, the restraining order hearing, counseling appointments, and finalizing the cessation of financial support. Everything needed to proceed without delay. It was the only way to protect her daughter and herself. A month later, Lindsay watched autumn's colors change from her office window. On her desk monitor, notifications showed Debbie's unpaid rent and Joseph's expulsion from school now that the restraining order was in place and financial support was cut off. As support ceased, the expected repercussions progressively unfolded. Olivia brought new documents, which were communications from the representative of Debbie and Kristen. Initially, they had threatened to take legal action against Lindsay for defamation, but the irrefutable evidence from the security footage rendered these threats baseless. "Schedule a meeting with their representative," Lindsay instructed with composure. Her intention was to eschew emotional reactions and pursue legal avenues as the optimal means to safeguard herself and her daughter. Previously, Madison had her first serene night in quite some time. The fortnightly counseling sessions were starting to bear fruit. Dr. Gale noted Madison's recovery was advancing positively. Nonetheless, the sporadic expressions of anxiety still tugged at Lindsay's heart. "Your mother has moved out." Olivia's voice pulled Lindsay back to the current situation. Her mother had vacated the posh Bellevue apartment last week, falling 3 months behind on rent. Lindsay silently acknowledged that her mother's new residence was a state housing unit on the city's edge, an unimaginable contrast to her formerly lavish lifestyle. "There's additional news about Kristen," Olivia continued. Having learned about their predicament during a visit, Jose's father had gained custody, and Kristen was obliged to pay child support. She now resided with Lindsay's mother. Just then, Wayne entered with new updates. "There's something you should know," he began cautiously. "Yesterday, Kristen was apprehended for shoplifting at a local supermarket, seemingly resolved through a plea bargain." Lindsay shut her eyes. Her sister's decline was glaringly evident. "And there's more," Wayne proceeded. "Debbie had been observed at a church charity seeking food aid, assistance once unimaginable for their mother, who previously indulged in luxury shopping, now a distant memory. All her social media posts have vanished," Olivia added, detailing how images of luxury brands and overseas adventures were all removed. The pretense-filled life had entirely crumbled. The days obscured by vanity and dependence had disintegrated completely. Legally, Wayne, as an expert, provided his insights. Their current circumstances further justify the cessation of support, underscoring that their prior opulent lifestyle wholly relied on your financial backing. Lindsay nodded, absorbing the situation with measured emotion. It was the outcome of a choice she had made and a necessary repercussion. "Mom, look, that afternoon," Madison returned from school, eagerly showing Lindsay her artwork. "My teacher suggested we enter it in the art exhibition." Seeing her daughter's joyful smile, Lindsay felt a wave of relief. Though Madison's school performance plummeted after the incident, it was now recovering. "Congratulations. It's a wonderful piece." During a video call with Thomas, he too felt gratified to hear about Madison's progress. He had managed to shorten his overseas assignment and was scheduled to return next month. At the arrivals area of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, Lindsay and Madison awaited Thomas's arrival from Hong Kong. "Dad's here," Madison exclaimed delightedly. "Welcome back." Lindsay embraced her husband. "It's so good to be together again." As they drove home, Thomas turned to Madison in the back seat. "How's school, Madison?" "It's fun. Next week is the Winter Music Festival. I've got a piano solo," she replied, now exuding a maturity that belied her 12 years. Normal family times meant ordinary happiness, yet Lindsay knew this normalcy wasn't to be taken for granted. Early the next morning, Lindsay arrived at the office to find a letter from her mother on her desk, already opened, having arrived through legal channels. "Lindsay, I won't ask for forgiveness anymore. I just hope you and Madison find happiness." After reading the letter, Lindsay exhaled deeply. Forgiving and mending that relationship were different paths. She aimed to concentrate on building a new family structure. No more fears, no more concerns. Upon returning home, Thomas was already preparing dinner, the mouth-watering aroma wafting from the kitchen. Madison had begun her piano practice in the living room as her parents listened intently. The music permeated the space,